good in the long run. And there's still time to change the road you're on.
So let me start out by saying that this is not a Gottman tape. This is a special tape. I'm going to make a new playlist. It's going to be called "Do You Know What Really Grinds My Gears?"
You know what really grinds my gears?
And I love that scene. And I love that episode. Because what I'm going to talk to you about today, really grinds my gears. So let's get started. Hi everybody, it's Dave, the Red Pill Coach, and I'm back again for another week to, this time, not teach you guys how to make your life better. I'm actually going to teach you a few things that may very well piss you off. So this video is not part of the Gottman series, or the Better Marriage series, whatever you want to call it, but it will help you with your marriage if you internalize some of this material and once you get over the anger stage. That's the key. So let's get started right away. I'm going to be talking today, and I'm going to talk today about domestic violence. Oh! DV, the boogie bear. The thing that has, I believe, impacted marriage more than anything. More than women getting the vote, more than feminist rights. It's all part and parcel of taking power from men and giving it to women. So, when we talk about domestic violence, and when anyone talks about DV, I think it's important that you have some knowledge on the topic that you're addressing. So boy, do I have some knowledge about this topic. Because I was a lawyer. I'm still a recovering lawyer. And I worked in a number of areas, including criminal law, for more than 12 years. And during that time period, I represented approximately, I think it's almost exactly, 152 domestic violence. Okay, 152. I had over 10 trials in this topic. I took 150 cases plus through to final disposition, which would be a plea, and so on. I interviewed the clients, I represented them from beginning to end. So as a lawyer, I know a little bit about domestic violence. I have a good sample to choose from. 152 of those, 2 were women. One was, I felt, wrongfully charged. Her husband, ex-husband, took the children and she grabbed them back and they got into a tussle. And the husband made a big show of falling and then called 911. So she's charged. Well, that didn't take much. All I had to do was talk to the victim's rights advocate and sicked her on the prosecutor. Case dismissed. No problem. But the second woman I represented is far more instructive, because this is quite an amazing story. I love to tell it, so I'll tell you. The woman was at a party with her husband, and she had a history of violence and attacking him and injuring him. He'd been hospitalized 3 or 4 times. Whenever she got drunk, she would attack him. Well, she got drunk. She attacked him. She took a plate and smashed it over his head, or a vase. It was a vase, yeah, a vase. Smashed it over his head, and the man had blood dripping down his face, both sides of his face. He had 4 or 5 shards of glass embedded in his skull. And the big boys in blue arrived. And online I sometimes describe the boys in blue as the white knights with small dicks, because that's kind of the way I feel. The white knights showed up, and of course they wiped some of the blood off the man's face and handcuffed him, because obviously he's the man, so he goes to jail. Well, then my client, the woman, comes screaming out of the kitchen. Now, first of all, why did they arrest the man? Because they talked to both people, and even though he's bleeding profusely and needed to go to the emergency room, she had a 1/4-inch bruise on her arm. You see, what happened is, after he had bloody shards stuck in his skull, she continued to attack him and attempted to drive the shards right into his brain and kill him. So he went like this, pushed her away, blocked it. Oh my God, there's a bruise! Arrest the man. And that's what happened. They were putting handcuffs on the man, but in this case, and normally that would have been the end of it, the man pleads guilty. He's now a wife abuser, right? Well, that's not what happened. The woman, my client, came charging out of the kitchen with another, I forget what she had. I think she had a coffee cup in her hand. And she tried to attack her husband again while he's handcuffed in front of the police. And the police grabbed her, she struggled, and swung at the cop, just like she swung at her husband. And lo and behold, the nice big boy in blue with the small penis blocked her arm. And he left about a 4-inch bruise right up and down her arm. And the police said, oh, okay, I get it. All right. So they put the handcuffs off the man and arrested the woman. We went to court. Of course, the case is dismissed, taken under advisement, no big deal. Girls will be girls, right? That's right. And that's my experience with domestic violence. That's my experience. My experience is with extremely minor injuries on the woman, bruises, and for the most part, they're what we call defensive injuries. When women call 911, 90% of the time, it's because they've suffered a defensive injury. That is to say, they're attacking the man with weapons, with pots and pans, with anything they can get their hands on, and the man defends himself. Boom! You go to jail. That's the law. And that's been my experience, and this is what I'm talking about today. And this is my experience with the Duluth model. That's D-U-L-U-T-H, Duluth model. And I'll talk about that in depth in the future, very shortly. But I want to talk about my introduction to the Duluth model. First of all, I learned that in most cases, it appeared to me that women were the ones who were violent, not men. And that whenever men were violent, it was in response to a woman provoking him mercilessly until he finally responded. Often attacking him and injuring him until he finally responded. Boom, he goes to jail. Now he's an abuser. She wins. And I saw this happen over and over and over and over again over a several-year period. So I was a little bit unhappy. I didn't think what was going on was correct or right. So, but did I take the red pill at that time? No. I think I stuck it in my mouth, but I didn't chew it up, and I certainly didn't swallow it. But what I did realize at that time, that with all these violent women out there and these men being arrested just for doing nothing but defend themselves, I realized a couple things. I also noticed something else. I noticed that women who are abuse victims, they very frequently have a whole line of men who abuse them. I mean, they go with one guy and he beats the hell out of her. Then he goes with another guy and he beats the hell out of her. Then he goes with a third guy and he beats the hell out of her. Call me weird, call me insensitive if you want, but it seems to me there is a common denominator in all these stories. And I realize that if you take one of these women, these abuse victims, who are repeatedly abused, of course any woman can hook up with an asshole and end up, turns out he's abusive. Okay, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the situation where a woman repeatedly, over and over again, hooks up with this abusive guy, then this abusive guy, then this abusive guy. And it happens all the time. And here's why it happens. Because if you got a room of 100 people, there might be one guy in there who's an abuser. Out of 100. One guy. You put him in one end of the room, and you put in this abuse victim, this poor put upon woman, in the other end, and you know what'll happen? They will gravitate towards each other like Mars and Phobos. Bad example. How about Titan and Saturn? They will immediately be attracted to one another. And the girl will get in front of him and she'll start flicking her hair and hee and laughing and twirling and oh, you're so funny. And then he'll pick her up, they'll have sex, and then it turns out, my gosh, those tattoos all up and down his back and the Sons of Anarchy bandana were a clue. The guy's an asshole. Wow. Who would have thought? Well, Anybody with a brain would have thought that, but these are the types of men that these abuse victims gravitate towards. They find the loudest, most obnoxious, rudest man in the room, and then they go in front of him and start this little hair twirling thing that they do, and plausible, oh, I didn't do anything to encourage him, I don't know why, he just seduced me. No. Ladies, grow up. You're not little girls. It's your issue. If you're being abused in a relationship, that's not anyone's fault but yours. Yeah, I said it. We got cell phones today. You got a little tiny bruise on your arm, you take a little picture, send it to your buddies, put it on Facebook, and hell, heaven and earth gets moved for you. They just fired the Ohio State coach because an assistant coach's wife texted his wife. Oh my God, why didn't he do something? He's like, well, because I didn't know. I'm working 27 hours a day. That's not good enough. Fired, you're no good. You should have been able to anticipate that one of your 37 assistant coaches was going to slap his wife. Because we know it was not the wife's fault at all. She did nothing to instigate it. She just was, the image, I'll put it right on the screen. You know the image. The poor woman, she's sitting there, and then she's crying, and then this guy's got a bottle. This ogre's standing over her yelling, holding a bottle of liquor in one hand, closed fist in the other. That's the image we have of domestic violence, right? Okay? That is not the way domestic violence looks in the real world. Because women seek it out. Certain types of women, not all women. Most women, if you hit them, they're gone. The way it should be, right? Right? Obviously. But these women go back for more because it gives them the tingles. It excites them that their man's strong enough to put them in her place. That's what's going on. They seek out these women. That's number one. That's one possibility. These women seek out these men, and they do. But there's another possibility. If we could blame the man, we could say it's all his fault, he's a dirty son of a bitch. Okay, we already do that. I'm not going to do that here. The other possibility, just something to consider, is that the woman instigated it. She started it. She became violent and unmanageable. She became dangerous, and she had to be restrained. She had to be pushed. She had to be taken down in some way, or she was going to hurt herself, and hurt him, or hurt the kids. And folks, that is the way most domestic violence plays out. The woman is the one who starts it, the woman instigates it, the woman continues to poke, and to shit test, and to prod, and to scream, and to yell, until it gets a reaction from the man. And then we say, oh my God, he's an abuser. But, this guy might have the patience of Job, right? Might very well have the patience of Job, but it doesn't matter. He defended himself from the attacks of a woman, so therefore he's a bad guy. So the other possibility with this, why do women repeatedly get abused by multiple men? The other possibility is that women are starting it. Women, certain types of women, start it. They keep poking until the man strikes out. And I'm convinced that this is at least part of the answer. For the very simple reason that most men, very few men, get in a relationship where they are the abuser. And then he gets into another relationship where he's the abuser. And then he gets into another relationship where he's the abuser. Almost never happens. Okay? About 2% of men are abusive. The other 98% of men are not. So the suggestion is that women who are abused seek out this 2% of men. This is what they cue on. And women who are abused very frequently instigate the abuse themselves. Yes, I said it, and yes, I'm blaming the victim because I've seen it. I've seen the blood dripping down the man's face. I've seen the woman hysterical. They do it all the time. And believe me, I could tell you stories. And yes, I've had stories of the 150 cases I've had, 153 cases I've had. I had a couple, maybe 4 or 5 total, where the man was clearly one of those 2% a-holes. Abusive jerk. Okay? So yeah, it happens. I'm not denying that. Okay? We're talking about percentages. When 90% of the cases are over here and 10% of the cases are way down here, maybe we need to look at more than 90% of the cases instead of the rare 10% of the cases, or 5% or 2%. Just a thought. That's how we should do it. So, as you know, I quit practicing law in 2004, when my baby died, and I went back to school. By 2006, I was in medical school, and I worked hard. I got a master's degree, did a kick-ass thesis on psychopathology and neuroimaging, taking functional MRI in psychopaths. Cool stuff. But I wanted to teach. I wanted to teach criminal justice. So I thought, if I switch to maybe social theory from medicine, I'll be able to teach criminal justice. And I did. It worked. I switched, got my PhD in not social justice, sociology or human social behavior. And why am I telling you this? Because as a sociologist, as a PhD student, as a doctoral student, I have studied domestic violence. So I've studied domestic violence as a lawyer. I've seen it. I've lived it for nearly 10 years. I have studied domestic violence very closely. As a PhD candidate and as a PhD student, I understand the score. And let me tell you what the score is. A few years ago, I went to a seminar, and the seminar was on community methods of social control. Okay, I'm teaching criminology at the University of Windsor, and I'm thinking, oh, this is cool. Let me learn a little bit about social control theory. Okay, so I went there, and this whole seminar, first of all, 99% of the people there were women. Almost all of them hideous. Okay, that's number one. That's the first thing I noticed. These are college students. They were all hideous. They all had an angry, pissed off look on their face. This was all put on by a women's studies department. And let me tell you about women's studies departments, folks. Every college in the nation has a women's studies department. What the hell do you think they're doing? You guys have any idea what these people do all day? Other than write editorials and stupid crap. They have a singular mission. All 200 or more, 1,000 probably, women's studies departments have a singular mission. And that mission is to destroy the patriarchy. See, in feminist theory, women believe that it's a Marxist theory. Okay, so Marx said that we have the bourgeois and the proletariat, the owners and the workers, and the owners screw the workers, and the workers work until they're dead, and the owners take all the money. Therefore, the workers should rise up, kill the owners, take over everything, and then it's going to work out great after we redistribute all the income. Feminism is exactly like that. It is a neo-Marxist philosophy, and the idea is that men have dominated women throughout history using the patriarchy. I still don't know what the hell the patriarchy is. Apparently it's the rule of men, where men got to choose the husbands of their daughters, so therefore that made it a patriarchy. Okay? So it's a patriarchy, and the goal of women's studies is to smash it. How do we do that? Well, very simply, we smash the patriarchy by taking power from men, giving it to women. That is the purpose of Marxism, to redistribute the wealth, or in the case of feminism, which is Marxism and Panties, feminism wants to redistribute power from men to women. That's what all these departments are all about. That's what every one of these screeching feminist professors are all about. Taking power from men and giving it to women. Now I ask you, where in our society do we have places dedicated to getting power from men and taking it cruelly, ripping it out of the hands of women? Is there any place in our society? There's one place. It's called the red pill. Married red pill to a lesser extent, but the red pill is the place you go, and it's the only place you can go, where men are actually meeting and working together to get more power. because that's what this is all about. That's what feminism is about. That's what this battle is about. They want more power. So I studied the issue. I went to a couple seminars. One seminar in particular I remember very clearly because I was shocked. And I think, and that was when I'd been studying the red pill by this time. And I think that was when I finally took the red pill. I finally took the red pill when I listened to these screeching, harpy feminists tell their stories. I mean, I went to this seminar thinking it was going to be about, you know, recidivism and re-entry into the system and how to, you know, community help, how a community can support an offender back into productive life. No, of course that's not what it was about. It was about women. First, last, and always. It was about the oppression of women and how women are so put upon. And there were seminars, and in these seminars, the way it works is you'll have like one big meeting hall, and then you'll break off into groups of 12 to 20 people at a time. And there might be 8 different lectures going on in different classrooms at a time. And you can choose which lecture you want to choose. So I chose, just because I had a glutton for punishment, I chose the lecture on domestic violence and sexual assault. And here's what I found. This is the most amazing thing. Here's what I found. This is a lecturer, and she's giving her, this is the results of 3 years of research, including a PhD dissertation. This is unpublished. Now, try to imagine how amazing that is that this is unpublished. Okay? This is unpublished because they're hiding it. They don't want you to know these numbers. They're hiding it. Okay? They publish the most inane bullcrap you can possibly imagine. I mean, they publish papers about how periods impact your work performance, and I can't even, the dumbest things possible. Nematodes dissections. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of papers. This is unpublished. And there's only one reason why it's unpublished. Because they don't want you to know about it. But now you're going to know because I took notes. So, first of all, 60%, they did surveys and observations and talked to people, and they find 60%, 6 out of 10 examples of relationship violence are instigated by both. They are cases of mutual combat, where the man and the woman are fighting, it gets physical, and they're both hitting each other. 6 out of 10. Well, guess what? 30% of the time, women are the sole instigators of violence in a relationship. And I should caveat, when women talk about violence, they're talking about physical violence. They're not talking about relational violence, which can be just as damaging. Women are experts at relational violence. Things like stopping sex. Things like getting dressed up all slutty and then saying, oh no, I don't feel like having sex today. So titillate and punish. That's relational violence. Threatening to take the children away. That's relational violence. Threatening to divorce. That's relational violence. This is what women do. All that's fine when women do it. When men do it, as we'll find out later, that's abuse. Okay? Fair enough. But when women do it, perfectly fine. I'm talking about actual physical violence. Punching, hitting, kicking. Women do it 30% of the time. Okay? So what that means, if you can do the math, 60% of the time it's mutual. 30% of the time, it's women only doing the violence. That means only 10% of the time are men the sole perpetrators of violence in relationships. Again, does not even include relational violence. Only includes actual physical violence. So, 90% of the time it's either both of them or the woman. 10% of the time it's the man. And 99% of the time in relational violence, it's the woman. So, who's more violent in relationships? Women are. There's no question anymore. We can attack it from a different angle, because again, they hide these numbers and they don't let us know. But they have a hierarchy of same-sex relationships, heterosexual relationships, cis-heteronormative is how they refer it, and lesbian relationships. Okay? So you got 2 men, you got 2 women, and a man and a woman. So you can rank those on a hierarchy of violence. And it turns out the least violent by a 10th, they're 10 times more likely to be non-violent are 2 men. 2 gay men with each other are 1/10 as likely to be violent as a heterosexual couple. Okay? Now, a heterosexual couple, this is the standard. We've already said 30, 60, 10. So we know how heterosexual relationships work. What about lesbian relationships? Of course, women are the soft, gentle sex. So we would expect no violence at all in lesbian relationships. As it turns out, female-only relationships are more than 10 times likely to be violent than heterosexual relationships. Okay, if you do the math, I believe that means a lesbian relationship is nearly 100 times as likely to be violent as a homosexual male relationship. That's astounding when you think about it. And again, it shows you who is the violent partner in relationships. It's women, not men. Even though it's women, there is exactly 1 domestic violence shelter available in the nation of the United States for men. 1. There are domestic violence shelters everywhere for women. They are everywhere. All a woman has to do is say, "He looked at me funny." Boom. The cops come in and take him away in chains. That is the law today, folks. It's outrageous and it's unfair. Try to reconcile that, where the man is arrested every time or almost every time in a domestic violence case, with the numbers I just told you. I don't think you can do it. I don't think it's possible to reconcile those numbers and stay sane. I'm already past the time here. I think I'm over 20 minutes already. I would like to continue this because I have a lot of information for you guys. A lot of information. From the red pill, from my experience as an attorney, from my research as a PhD student. We're gonna bust through this Duluth model and this relational violence stuff today. Because I want to tell you, the Duluth model, which I'm going to talk about next time, the Duluth model is the model used by police departments, it's used by domestic violence shelters, it's used by counselors and therapists, it's used by everybody. And the Duluth model is a communist model. It is based on the idea that women are oppressed and men, just what I said at the beginning of this, the patriarchy is reason women get beat. So therefore, the goal of social policy must be to destroy the patriarchy. That's the goal of social policy. Wipe out the patriarchy and everything will be just fine. And then we do that by holding men responsible whenever anything goes wrong. If a woman attacks a man, it doesn't matter. She is the victim of hundreds of years of patriarchy, so therefore she gets a pass. If a man attacks a woman, he is perpetuating the patriarchy, and therefore he has to have the book thrown at him. Okay? So I'll get more into the Duluth model next time, and I'm going to tell you a little story as well about my own domestic violence case. Don't try this at home, folks. So we'll see you next week.
I can't do this all on my own. No, I know I'm no Superman.